Thunder no more. We have undergone apotheosis, and I am now the Chayula Truther. And in Thunder slash Chayula Truther fashion, we have a rant incoming about the current state of Chonk and how it kind of just upsets me seeing how there's so much potential in its identity, but it's just poorly executed in this point in the game. And we're kind of going to go over what it is currently, and we're going to compare it a little bit to Blood Mage, which is, one of the best classes they've released in Path of Exile 2. And then we're going to go over some cool ideas I have for how to improve it and make it sit better in the fantasy that I think Acolyte of Chayula players would like. So, sit tight. I guess I'll start this video by saying that I don't know everything. And in tandem with that, I know that Chonk is viable. You can clear the game with it. You can kill pinnacles on it. This isn't a class is too weak kind of video. This is this class's identity is being underdelivered type of video. Because I genuinely love this class, and I've played it for over 400 hours, like almost exclusively at this point. But the more that I watched videos on the state of Chonk, and when I saw people were focusing on its pure damage potential instead of its lack of identity, it didn't sit right with me. And I just wanted to, I guess, put in my 2 cents that no one asked for before 0.5 launches, and we get the secret notable that maybe it'll be like the savior. It'll be like Christmas Day for Chonk, but you never know. So I don't know. Wanted to put all my thoughts in one place and kind of look at the Acolyte of Chayula from an angle of how can it be improved thematically and in identity. When we compare Chonk to something like Blood Mage, it's evident when you're on Blood Mage that you know what you're signing up for immediately, right? The second that you click on Sangomancy, the class that you chose, clicks. But not only that, the identity of the class, which is using life for damage, is given to you for free. So not having to spend points to get that node lets you have immediate agency of how you customize that identity. It is very well designed, and it allows you to have an organized direction of just how you'd like to use that life magic. Do you want an offensive Blood Mage? A defensive Blood Mage? A hybrid Blood Mage? All of it is viable and supported by the Ascendancy. This results in great satisfaction for the player, having agency to fully see out their vision of their Blood Mage. Chonk just doesn't feel like that. It feels a bit more like, here's some darkness, here's some chaos res, here's some volatility, here's a big fat vine boom when you roll. The tree just feels disjointed. All of these nodes do just so little outside of being loosely within the archetype that it's painful. Let's start with darkness. I genuinely think darkness is one of the coolest notables on the Ascendancy, but it comes with one teensy drawback: completely gutting any creativity with spirit in its skills. All that to grant you a shield that is bricked as early as the start of Act 3. Looking further into Deepening Shadows, which makes it scale with chaos resistance, and how it doesn't even account for any chaos resistance over 75%, which renders something like Chayula's Gift even more useless, especially on a monk where chaos inoculation is the standard solution to chaos damage. Next is Grasp of the Void. I like Void Illusion. I just wish it had any sort of built-in way to increase its damage, besides skits techniques and higher weapon damage. On that note, I hate that you have to have a martial weapon or hollow palm to even use this skill. The idea of an illusion mage is sick, but it's ruined by a stupid prerequisite. And then we have Chayula's Gift. It's really hard to commit to doubling your chaos resistance on a monk subclass. The reason being, like I said just 1 second ago, is that chaos inoculation is easily superior for a class that generally runs ES and evasion gear. God forbid I talk about volatility. I hate volatility, as a whole, from the ground up. But the icing on the cake is the deadbeat nodes that snuck into the Chonk tree specifically, such as you gain 1 stack of volatility on Elemental Ailment. 1. It might as well not exist. It's faster to accrue with support gems. It's such a shameful node outside of not taking damage from the volatile explosion, which you don't even care about in the first place. And because there's no way you're speccing into this node, because it's worse than a well-built Into the Breach build. On the topic of volatility, Unraveling is up there with one of the worst things I've ever seen. Why on God's green earth would I want to proc elemental ailments that I'm definitely not scaling the magnitude of on Acolyte of Chayula when Invoker is right there? It's so out of place, and it's just copium to proc Inner Turmoil more often. That being said, Shock is nice, but it's too bad that you can only guarantee it 1/3 of the time. And it's also notable that you can in fact shock if you have any lightning damage on your weapon. And then there is the Knight in Shining Armor, Into the Breach, the savior of Acolyte of Chayula. I know a lot of people don't like picking up remnants, but personally, I really enjoy the idea of piecing together power from fragments as you roam around. I often hear a lot of people tout Chonk's viability because of the raw damage potential of this singular node on the Ascendancy. Those people fail to realize the true problem with Chonk. It's not damage or viability that Chonk is lacking, bar some genuinely non-viable nodes. What it's truly lacking is a reason to play the class as a whole. People play Blood Mage for 2 reasons. It's strong, in a numbers way, which makes people get interested in the first place, via its reputation. But more than that, people play it because its identity is strong, and it brings very unique notables that are fun and interesting to build around. That's kind of why I'm making this video. I love the idea of Chonk, and I played it with every weapon and most spells. Of course, I haven't even scratched the surface of all the things that you could do on it, but I've definitely played enough to have a good grasp on its thematic weaknesses. And Sap of Nightmares, however, is anything but a thematic weakness. Enabling chaos damage from Leech is an excellent node, and it's a true reason to play the Acolyte of Chayula, as it's the only source of chaos as Leech in the game right now. Now we've reached the point where I'll kind of describe how I would fix Chonk's issues in ways that appeal to me and seem interesting inside the thematic of the character itself. We'll start with Darkness. I'm going to be honest. If Darkness wants to take Spirit, it's going to have to cough up some reserve skills of its own to make it worth doing. No one in their right mind is giving up Heralds or ES replenishing skills for 1000 legally distinct purple energy shield. So in light of the fact that GGG would never do that, I think Spirit skills and minions should be able to be conjured up from Darkness at an increased cost. Reserving from Darkness would just remove the reserved amount from the total pool that is being used as the defensive layer. Also, Spirit to Darkness should be a conversion, being that more Spirit equals more Darkness. As a final note on this node, I think that you should get a similar quantity of minions / reservation skills early game, and preferably much more than possible before on Monk in the late game. Deepening Shadows, I would fold Chayula's Gift into this and make it uncapped chaos resistance. It's not a big deal to give Chaos Monk 100+% chaos resist when every class can get chaos inoculation for free. That would look something like +1% maximum darkness per 1% chaos resistance. Double your chaos resistance. Your chaos resistance is uncapped. This would tie a neat little bow on defenses on the Acolyte. Like seriously, you shouldn't have to spend 6 Ascendancy points for the Chaos Monk to be resistant to chaos, and use it as defense efficiently. That's like if you had to go 6 nodes for Sanguimancy and Spell Leech on Blood Mage. It just wouldn't make sense, and it also frees up space for innovation in the Chonk tree as a whole. For Grasp of the Void, I just wish there was some way to use it as a spellcaster. Maybe something like a darkness scaling? I can't say as of right now, but maybe I'll have an idea for the skill later. I think Waking Dream is almost perfect as it is. But The history of Chonk really boils down to 40 fancy ways to get extra damage as Chaos. That being said, I think finding some way to turn it into a Chaos burn over time would be really cool. They are purple flames of Chayula after all. Something to the effect of gain percent of damage as Chaos burn would be really fun and build enabling, allowing you to turn big hits into big DOTs without the use of bleed. Another more reasonable change would be to slightly shrink the iris surrounding the player, so that minor investment into remnant pickup range would solve any current collecting issues. Lucid dreaming. I have some particularly schizo dreams for this notable. I think it should fully upgrade the flames, and give you a reason to use each one. That would read something like, all flames of Chayula grant 7% of damage as extra chaos, up to a maximum of 10 total stacks, as it is currently. And on top of that, you could still choose to only have one type of flame appear, but it would change the effect of each flame, giving you a reason to use them. Blue flames of Chayula would enable all chaos damage to contribute to shock, and leech 20% of your maximum mana. Red flames of Chayula would enable all chaos damage to contribute to ignite, and leech 20% of your maximum health to you. Purple flames of Chayula would enable all chaos damage to contribute to freeze, and leech 20% of your maximum darkness to you, which would be able to overflow, limited to 1.5 times that of the maximum, which would obviously be 0 if you didn't spec into darkness on the ascendancy tree. In my opinion, this mogs unraveling as an interesting way to tie in the elements to Chayula, and it also makes taking lucid dreaming feel like an upgrade. Instead of 4 minor nodes of remnant strength and remnant pickup range, and a choice of which flame you get, I didn't want to spike the damage part of this ability, as with remnant strength you can already get an absurd bonus. Instead I chose to focus on Chonk's innate lack of interesting defensive options for a place to buff it, plus the utility and build opportunity with contributing to elemental debuffs would be pretty huge. Sap of Nightmares is pretty great, but I think a notable past it that, I don't know, allowed Leech to work on Energy Shield? That might go pretty hard, man. I don't know. Also, the minor node before it should include built-in Leech, as well as the increase, to give you a starting point. Inner Turmoil. For this notable, we have to tackle volatility directly. I've theory crafted for a while now, and I think I've reached a fun idea for how to change volatility. That would look something like, volatility begins accruing stacks as you deal chaos damage and use chaos skills. Each stack of volatility grants 1% of damage as extra chaos per stack, while lowering your chaos resistance by 1 for each stack. This would be sort of like a new Into the Breach for people who simply want more damage as chaos. Another idea that I like is exchanging the 100 physical damage per stack explosion that's in the game now to chaos damage, which doesn't matter all that much for Chonk, because this notable would also make him immune to the explosion. But for something like a witch, it opens up chaos inoculation as a way to solve for volatility usage, and would see its usage rate increase vastly. Now for unraveling. I've rebuilt this from the ground up. For one, because it's not particularly useful or unique as it stands, and 2, because I made a more interesting version of it earlier. So the new unraveling would state, when hit while possessing volatility, the Acolyte retaliates and knocks back enemies based on how many stacks of volatility you have, exchanging 10% of the total volatile pool to rebuff the attacking enemy and those surrounding it with heavy chaos damage. This would come with the keyword of Unraveled, where enemies hit by the blast become easier to stun and grant an additional chunk of volatility on heavy stun as well as their death to help upkeep your stacks. Not only would this be a unique use for volatile stacks for Chonk, but it makes the choice of darkness a lot more viable since you have a Wind Dancer at home on your Ascendancy. Now that is what we call a cool and interesting kit. One that really fits into the idea of tapping into chaos. Tamper with the chaotic and find that it makes you unstable, but only the monk can find the truest stability inside of that entropy, and he can use it to beat his foe's head in, as well as stay safe. As you can see now, it was never about Blood Mage getting a free notable on its Ascendancy. It was about getting to the fantasy of the class quick, and the power that only comes with that. The important bits of Blood Mage's kit are right at the doorstep, and immediately after, It opens the door for interesting synergies with the keywords and notables right after you grab Sangomancy, turning flickering sparks into comets, or mana flare spam FPS eaters, bleed on crit spellcaster, or an HP stacking flex build. The point is, it's plentiful. And I want Chonk to feel just as plentiful. I think the most important parts of Chonk's kit are darkness and volatility, at least thematically speaking. Feeling as though you have a cloak knit by the breach itself to guard you from damage is a sick fantasy. And just behind that is the idea of becoming increasingly more unstable as you accrue volatility in a way that feels empowering and less like stepping on Legos. I think there is a world of possibilities in the changes I made up for this video. And it's not to say that I think GGG will ever implement these. Would I like it if they did? Yeah. But would I be mad if they did something completely different? Not at all. I just wanted to toss some pop rocks into the stale discussion surrounding Chonk. The creativity is really what makes me happy. And a lot of the kit that Chonk has right now, and a lot of the builds that I see on repeat, lack creativity. That's this video in a bow. Let's get more creative. That being said, GGG has done an excellent job on the newer ascendancies, like Disciple of Varashta. It appears they are truly leaning into more creative gameplay and build crafting territory. Spirit Walker and Martial Artist seem very promising. In light of the clear vignettes designed into these two ascendancies, it is evident that GGG understands more closely what the community likes to see from ascendancies. And I feel a security in the observable improvement of player agency and individual specialization. So, I hope that videos like this one will help to inspire good change in the future of character design, as well as promoting healthy discourse and earnest feedback surrounding the current state of some of the older characters. As I was in the process of making this video, they dropped information on reworks to both Chronomancer and Gemling Legionnaire, both of which look absolutely amazing. Only time will tell, of course, as all is up to the feel of these things, but the changes are relevant to the identity of each character, and it's exciting to see changes like this in real time. I appreciate those of you who watched the video to the end. I plan to make more Path of Exile 2 videos just like this one in the future, discussing systems of the game and going in depth about things that I like and dislike. If you liked the video, consider liking or dropping a sub. No hard feelings if you don't though, of course. It's more than appreciated if you stuck around and listened to the unhinged ranting of a guy who named himself after the character that he's talking about. And with all that said, I guess I'll see you later.